Okay, so let's dive into this idea of sending money or data across different blockchains being as easy as sending an email.
Yeah.
We're talking about Quant, QNT, a platform that's attracting a lot of attention lately.
Yeah, it's making some waves, especially with institutions like banks.
Interesting.
Yeah, you sent over some really interesting sources on Quant Bitcoin and just general crypto market trends.
Yeah, and that's what we'll be exploring today in our deep dive.
Sounds good.
We'll explore where Quant fits in, what's driving its recent price movements, and whether this tech is really as revolutionary as some are claiming.
Cool.
And I think one of the most interesting things about Quant is that it's targeting institutions rather than just, you know, the typical crypto crowd.
Right. And they seem to be banking on the idea that these institutions will need a way to integrate blockchain technology. And Quant is positioning itself as that solution.
Definitely a unique approach.
Yeah.
But speaking of interesting things, one of the sources you sent mentioned an analyst who believes that Bitcoin is oversold right now. What I thought was really interesting is that this prediction is based on blockchain data, not just, you know, speculation. But before we get into that, let's break down what Quant is and how it works.
Sounds good.
So essentially, Quant aims to be a bridge between all these different blockchains. And they developed this technology called Overledger, which acts like a universal translator. So can you talk a little bit more about how Overledger works and what it does?
Yeah, so Overledger operates on 3 levels.
Okay.
The first is the transaction layer, which ensures that transactions can seamlessly occur across different blockchains. The second is the messaging layer, which facilitates data sharing between these blockchains.
Gotcha.
And finally, the filtering and ordering layer ensures security and the proper sequencing of all operations.
So essentially, it's like a well-oiled machine, making sure that all these different blockchain languages can be understood and everything runs smoothly.
Exactly.
But I think a lot of people listening might be wondering, why should anyone care about connecting blockchains? What's the big deal?
Well, imagine a world where your loyalty points from one company could be used to buy something from a completely different company, even if they use different blockchain systems.
That makes sense.
Or think about healthcare records being securely shared between hospitals across different countries, regardless of their tech infrastructure.
Okay, so that's the kind of future interoperability enables.
Exactly.
Okay, so now I'm starting to see why this is generating so much buzz. So Quant is essentially laying the groundwork for a more connected blockchain future. But I want to get back to those price movements that we talked about. We see that QNT is up today, but it's down 10% over the past month. Even with this recent bump. What's your take on that?
Well, it's hard to say for sure if this is just a temporary rebound, like a dead cat bounce. We need to look at the bigger picture here.
Okay, so what does the bigger picture tell us?
Well, Bitcoin is also on a downtrend right now. Down about 22% from its all-time high in January.
Interesting.
So the question is, are these connected? Is Quant's fate tied to Bitcoin's? Or is there something else at play?
That's a great question. And before we get into Bitcoin, I want to stick with Quant for a little bit longer. One of the sources you sent over mentioned that Quant has a limited maximum supply of tokens. Specifically, 14,612,493 QNT. So what are the implications of that?
Well, that's a key point. In the crypto world, scarcity often drives value. Just like with a limited edition collectible, the fewer tokens there are, the more potentially valuable they become as demand increases.
That makes sense.
This limited supply could be a factor influencing those long-term price predictions we saw for QNT.
Which ranged from $400 down to $15 by 2030.
Exactly.
Those are some pretty wild swings.
What factors could lead to those extreme outcomes?
Well,
and is Quant's approach to institutional adoption unique?
Well, Quant isn't the only player in the interoperability space. But their focus on institutions does set them apart.
So what are some other projects that are trying to do something similar?
Well, projects like Polkadot, for example, are taking a more decentralized approach. Whether Quant's strategy will be more successful remains to be seen. However, it's worth noting that their success might be heavily influenced by Bitcoin's performance.
Right.
Considering how closely their price movements seem to be correlated.
And considering how closely Quant's fate seems tied to Bitcoin's overall trends, I think it's time to shift gears and discuss Bitcoin's current situation.
Okay.
So one of the sources you sent mentioned that Bitcoin might be oversold.
Right.
Now, for those who are new to this, can you break down what oversold actually means?
Sure. Think of it like this. Imagine a store having a massive clearance sale on a popular item.
Suddenly, everyone rushes to buy because it's significantly cheaper than usual. In finance, oversold refers to a situation where an asset's price has dropped more than it should based on its perceived value.
So it's like that item on sale.
Exactly.
Potentially undervalued and ripe for a rebound.
Right.
Interesting analogy.
Yeah.
So this analyst believes that Bitcoin is essentially a bargain right now.
That's what it seems like.
And they're using something called the NVT Golden Cross indicator to back up this claim. Can you explain how this indicator works?
Yeah. So the NVT Golden Cross compares Bitcoin's network value to the volume of transactions happening on its blockchain.
Okay.
It helps assess whether the network's valuation is justified by its actual usage.
So when the indicator dips below a certain level, it's signaled that Bitcoin is oversold.
Historically, yes.
Okay, and in this case, it's dipped below negative 2.4.
Right.
So this isn't just a gut feeling, there's data to support this prediction.
Exactly.
But I'm a little confused. Earlier, we talked about Quant's price being down, potentially because it was following Bitcoin's lead.
Right.
So if Bitcoin is poised for a rebound, wouldn't that be good news for Quant?
It's certainly a possibility.
Okay.
There's a definite correlation between Bitcoin and altcoins like Quant. However, whether Quant will rise in tandem with Bitcoin or even outperform it is a bit more complex.
Okay, so even though there's a connection, it's not a simple one-to-one relationship.
Right.
What are the key things to watch for to determine if Bitcoin is actually going to rebound?
Well, there are a few factors to keep in mind.
Okay.
First, market sentiment.
Okay.
If more analysts start agreeing that Bitcoin is oversold, it could trigger a wave of buying, pushing the price up.
So kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way?
Yeah, you could say that.
Okay, what else?
Second, we should watch for a technical correction. Even without a major shift in sentiment, markets tend to self-correct after a steep decline.
Okay, so it's like a rubber band snapping back after being stretched too far?
Exactly.
What else should we be looking out for?
Keep an eye on the whales, as they're called in the crypto world.
Right.
These are individuals or entities holding large amounts of Bitcoin.
Gotcha.
If they start buying it, could signal a rebound.
Okay, and I imagine any positive news like favorable regulations or major companies adopting Bitcoin?
Yep, those could also be catalysts.
Okay, so we've got market sentiment, technical correction, whale activity, and positive news as potential triggers for a Bitcoin comeback. That's a lot to keep track of.
Yeah.
But let's not forget about the risks.
Of course.
One of the sources mentioned a key resistance level for Bitcoin around $96,895.
Okay.
Which is the 111-day moving average.
Right.
What happens if Bitcoin fails to break through that level?
That's where things could get tricky. If Bitcoin can't break through that resistance level, and especially if it drops significantly below $75,000, it could signal the end of this bull market cycle.
So not exactly to the moon then.
Not quite.
More like stuck in a rut potentially.
Yeah.
But even if Bitcoin does struggle, wouldn't Quant's focus on institutions offer some protection from that volatility?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things that makes Quant so fascinating. Their focus on enterprise solutions could give them a certain degree of independence from the whims of the retail crypto market.
Okay.
Institutions tend to have a longer-term perspective and are less likely to panic sell at the first sign of trouble.
So there's a chance that Quant could weather the storm even if Bitcoin takes a hit?
It's possible.
But let's be realistic.
Sure.
No cryptocurrency exists in a vacuum.
Right.
If the overall sentiment sours and we enter a prolonged crypto winter, it's unlikely that Quant would emerge unscathed.
Exactly. While Quant's institutional focus might offer some buffer, it's still interconnected with the broader crypto ecosystem.
Okay, so we've established that Bitcoin's performance could significantly impact Quant, for better or worse. But let's flip the script.
Okay.
Could Quant's technology actually impact Bitcoin itself?
That's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
If Quant can deliver on its promise of making connecting to Bitcoin easier, especially for financial institutions, it could be a game changer.
So what would that look like in practice?
Imagine a world where banks can seamlessly move assets between their own systems and the Bitcoin blockchain.
Right.
This kind of integration could significantly boost Bitcoin's adoption and legitimize it in the eyes of traditional finance.
So Quant could be a key player in bridging the gap between traditional finance and the crypto world.
Potentially, yes.
That's a pretty big deal.
It is.
But let's play devil's advocate for a moment.
Okay.
Even if Bitcoin rebounds and Quant rides that wave to new highs, what could go wrong?
Well, the biggest hurdle for Quant, even in a positive market, is adoption.
Okay.
For their Overledger technology to truly succeed, it needs to be widely embraced, and that's not guaranteed.
But why not? Connecting different blockchains sounds like a no-brainer.
Well, it might sound simple on the surface, but I imagine there are some roadblocks when it comes to real-world implementation.
I see what you mean.
Yeah.
You've got a point. Connecting different blockchains may sound simple on the surface.
Right.
But I imagine there are some roadblocks.
Absolutely.
When it comes to real-world implementation.
One major challenge is inertia.
Inertia.
Yeah. Big institutions like the ones Quant is targeting are notoriously slow to adapt to new technologies.
That's true.
They have legacy systems, complex regulations to navigate, and a general aversion to risk.
So even if the technology sounds convincing these behemoths to actually use it is a whole other battle.
Exactly.
What else stands in Quant's way?
Well, competition is another factor.
Okay.
There are other projects like Polkadot that are also vying for a piece of the interoperability pie.
And we discussed that Grayscale filing to list a DOT ETF earlier. Yeah.
Which shows their serious interest in this space.
For sure.
Right, which means Quant isn't the only game in town. Even with a fantastic product, they still need to prove to institutions that they're the best choice.
Yeah, they need to market themselves effectively, build strong partnerships within the industry, and demonstrate their long-term viability.
So essentially, they need to build trust and confidence.
Exactly.
It sounds like a lot of things have to go right for Quant to truly take off.
It does.
Let's shift gears and talk about the potential rewards.
Okay.
So we've discussed how Quant could play a significant role in connecting the traditional financial world with the blockchain world. But how would this impact everyday people?
That's where things get really exciting.
Okay.
Imagine a world where you could seamlessly move your assets between different platforms without going through complicated exchange processes.
Okay.
Or picture using loyalty points from one company
to pay for goods or services from another, even if they utilize different blockchain systems.
That level of interconnectivity sounds incredibly convenient.
It would be a game changer.
Almost too good to be true.
Right.
Are there other areas where this technology could have a tangible impact?
Definitely think about supply chain management.
Okay.
With interoperability, we could have real-time tracking of goods as they move across borders.
Right.
Leading to increased transparency, efficiency, and accountability.
Makes sense.
Or consider healthcare.
Okay.
Where patient data could be securely shared between different providers and systems, regardless of their underlying technology.
So the possibilities are vast.
They are.
I'm beginning to see the potential here. It sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie.
It does a bit.
But is this something that could realistically happen in the near future?
Well, the timeline is uncertain.
Okay.
But the groundwork is already being laid.
Okay.
The technology exists. What we need now is for more companies and institutions to embrace it and start building on it.
So it's like the early days of the internet?
Yeah.
We knew it had the potential to change the world, but it took time for that potential to be fully realized.
That's a great analogy.
And just like with the internet, there will be winners and losers along the way.
Right. Some projects will thrive while others fade away.
Given that, what should investors be looking for in this space?
The most important thing is to focus on fundamentals.
Okay.
Look for projects with strong teams, clear use cases, and robust technology.
Okay, so don't get caught up in the hype or FOMO.
Exactly.
That's easier said than done when you're staring at wild price swings and everyone's talking about getting rich quick.
I know, but it's crucial to stay focused on the long term.
Okay, fundamentals first. What else is important to consider?
Pay close attention to real-world adoption.
Okay.
Which projects are actually being used in the real world? Which ones are forming partnerships with major players That's a strong indicator of viability.
So it's not just about the tech itself, it's about who's using it and how it's being implemented.
Right.
That makes sense. Any other advice for navigating this complex landscape?
Absolutely. Think long-term.
Okay.
Does the project have a clear roadmap for the future? Are they constantly innovating and adapting to the changing landscape?
Right.
You want to invest in projects that can stay ahead of the curve.
So essentially, it's about betting on the projects that have the foresight and adaptability to evolve with the market.
Precisely. And remember, diversification is key.
Okay.
Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Right.
Spread your investments across different projects that you believe in.
That's sound advice. We've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
From the potential of a Bitcoin rebound and Quant's role in bridging the gap between traditional finance and the blockchain world, to the broader implications of interoperability and how it could shape our future.
It's been a great discussion.
Yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we move on to our final thoughts?
I think we've covered the key points.
This has been a really fascinating discussion.
Yeah, I agree.
We've gone deep into the tech, the market dynamics, and the potential impact of Quant and Bitcoin.
It's a lot to take in.
So hopefully our listeners are feeling a bit more informed and maybe even a little inspired.
To explore this world further, for sure.
Speaking of exploring further, it's time for that big thought-provoking question you always like to leave our listeners with.
All right.
Something to really get them thinking.
We've talked a lot about connecting different blockchains.
Right, and how Quant aims to be that bridge.
Right, but what about connecting traditional finance with the entire blockchain world?
Oh.
Is Quant just a stepping stone
to
a future where those lines completely blur?
That's a mind-bending thought. A future where banks and crypto coexist.
Yeah, or even blend together.
Is that even possible?
It's certainly a possibility worth exploring.
Yeah, what would that even look like?
Think about the implications for how we bank, how we invest, how we manage our money.
Right. Would it make the financial system more accessible? Potentially. More efficient, more transparent?
All those things are possible.
But couldn't it also create a whole new set of challenges and risks?
Definitely.
I mean, the traditional financial system is already incredibly complex.
Yeah. Adding blockchain into the mix could make things even more complicated.
Exactly. Complexity can breed confusion.
Right.
And potentially new vulnerabilities.
True. But it can also be a catalyst for innovation.
That's a good point.
Perhaps this convergence is what we need to create a more equitable and sustainable financial future for everyone.
All right, so for our listeners, here's your homework. Explore the potential convergence of traditional finance and blockchain.
I like it.
What are the potential benefits and pitfalls? What role could a platform like Quant play in shaping that future?
Those are all great questions.
And as you delve into this, remember to look beyond the headlines and the hype.
Absolutely.
Seek out diverse perspectives.
For sure.
Challenge assumptions, and above all, think critically.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Because in the world of blockchain, the only constant is change.
Right.
Those who can adapt, learn, and evolve will be the ones who thrive.
Exactly.
So keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.
And thanks for joining us.
Thanks for listening, everyone.